So before we start, I just have to point out all three of these microphones going through the Mackie DLZ Creator, both of these at 60 dB of gain, and the SM58 is at approximately 56 dB of gain, just to equalize the three of them and less post-production in the end. The amount of gain on them will not show up in the noise profiles because it's a pretty low amount of gain for the DLZ Creator. This is going to be an absolute nightmare to have to do in post. Everything's set up right. We all know how the world reacted to the new SM7DB. There are a lot of voices saying that the upgrade on the Classic missed the mark, including mine. And it's kind of hard to argue that. However, this is also just an updated SM7B, and really, it just offers one more option in the lineup. Now, I am able to say that since the OG SM7B has not been discontinued, at least not so far, which does make the existence of this microphone less insulting. So then, that means this mic needs the same paces as the last one, and that all starts with this: a blind shootout between the SM58, the SM7B, and the SM7DB. Now, I know I've done a lot of videos like this one before, but this one's going to serve as a bit of an update to those older videos. And this update is necessary for several reasons, other than just the new addition of the new SM7 microphone here. This is a constant learning process, and the positioning of these mics is probably the biggest update here. You see, in the first videos I did like this, I did neglect to position the mics properly. And even though being at an angle to the mouth doesn't change the sound much, it does change it a bit, meaning any mic placed at an angle to my mouth does suffer just enough to make the difference in the outcome. So that is why I have all the mics laid out in this pattern, and I was clinical with this. No one can argue that the capsules weren't lined up, so I can hear the end of that argument. Yes? Now, I think this is going to give us the perfect test for these mics, and I don't think there will be any variation in the signal that comes out of these microphones. Feel free to offer different setups in the comments. I'm always open to growth. Future Aiden here. I also want to point out that the differences between the waveforms of these three microphones were so close that you actually have to look through the waveform to be able to see exactly how different they are. I also want to point out that several people said they could hear a difference between the SM7DB and the SM7B. Time to put the money where your mouth is. I think it's absolute BS, and I'm here to make you do that. But I think the biggest reason for this updated video here is full transparency. It's something that mic companies are not willing to offer when putting another mic on the market with an inflated price. Of course, whether or not a microphone is worth the price is a very personal decision, and I'm not here to shame anyone into a purchase. But on the other side of that coin, there are a lot of people out there with less knowledge of mics that might think more expensive equals better, and that the level of expense is relative to the level of quality. And that just isn't always the case. There are several factors beyond price that make a microphone a perfect purchase, from use case to resaleability, not to mention the law of diminishing returns. And while all three of these mics are very much in the realm of legendary, and that's almost undisputable, there is definitely a luxury tax on the SM7B and the new SM7DB. That is undisputable. But I'm also super fascinated by the reactions of a lot of people when I point this kind of stuff out. On one hand, people love to call me an elitist when I don't like a specific microphone, like the Samson Q9U. But then when I make arguments for the SM58 over the SM7 series, they turn around and argue that the SM7 series is somehow worthy of greater praise. It's almost like people are willing to look past a lot of concrete evidence just to get a microphone that is aesthetically pleasing to them, which is what I think is the greatest downfall of the SM58. It just looks like a stage mic to a lot of people. However, when you actually plot these three microphones against each other in a blind taste test like this one, those margins in sound become quite a bit clearer. And this is the fascinating argument. Yes, the differences in sound between the SM58 and the SM7 series are there. The keen-eared among you will be able to pick up on that. But may I remind you the price difference between these mics? $99 for the SM58, $399 for the SM7B, and $499 for the new SM7DB. That means the SM7B is 4 times more expensive than the SM58, and the SM7DB is 5 times more expensive. So if you're sitting here listening to the frequency differences between these three mics, let me ask you this. Is the difference between these mics enough to justify that cost differential? Remember, in something like a podcast, not a single person will be listening for those differences. Not a single person will care about those ever so slight differences. And when most people listen to your content, they're going to be doing so on devices that will even mask many of those differences due to the inability to recreate those frequencies. So with all that said, is there anyone brave enough here to mount a defense in support of purchasing the more expensive SM7 series of mics over the SM58, especially when you ignore the aesthetics. I would like to hear from those dissenters down below. I really would. And while I know there are differences in the sound between these mics, I also know those differences are really small in the grand scheme of things, and that most people, especially casual listeners, will not and cannot in most cases hear the difference. And that is my case for these three mics. But since we're all here and all wondering what the answer is, I want you all to note the time on the video and answer below with your guesses. It's okay to pause here. Okay, let's reveal who is who. Microphone A is the SM7DB. Microphone B is the SM58. And mic C is the SM7B. Did you get it? If you did get it, reply to the pinned tweet on this video. I know some of you have dog-like hearing, so I know some of you could pick it out, but the interesting one is the SM7B versus the SM7DB. I think that's going to be hard for a lot of people. Now, I can't wait to hear from you, so cheers, and I'll see you in the next video.